Before kingdoms rose and fell, before kings ruled with wisdom or folly, there walked among the people men who spoke for God. They were not priests, nor were they warriors. They were prophets, flame-bearers of divine truth. Among the greatest of them was a man named Elisha, a prophet who carried the mantle of miracles. But before Elisha was called, there was another, Elijah, fierce and wild, who summoned fire from heaven and challenged kings. And when Elijah's time came to pass the flame, God led him to a plowman, one with dirt beneath his fingernails and sweat on his brow. This is the story of Elisha, the prophet who performed great miracles, not for show, not for fame, but to reveal a living God among a broken people. Chapter 1. The Burning Plow. Elisha was working in the field, yoked to oxen when Elijah approached. The prophet didn't speak a word. He simply threw his mantle, his cloak of authority, over the younger man's shoulders. It was not just a garment. It was a calling. Elisha left the oxen, but before following Elijah, he did something symbolic and radical. He slaughtered the oxen. He burned the plow. He fed the people. He made sure there was no turning back. "Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye," he said. "Then I will come with you." From that day forward, he followed Elijah as servant, student, and eventually, successor. Chapter 2. The Fiery Departure. Years later, when Elijah knew the Lord was about to take him, he said to Elisha, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha replied, "As surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." They went from Bethel to Jericho to the Jordan River. At each place, other prophets warned Elisha, "Do you know the Lord is going to take your master today?" "Yes, I know," Elisha said, "but do not speak of it." At the Jordan, Elijah took off his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water. The river parted, and they crossed on dry ground. Then Elijah said, "Tell me what I can do for you before I am taken." Elisha answered, "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit." Elijah replied, "You have asked a difficult thing. If you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours." As they walked, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated them. Elijah was taken up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." He tore his robes, picked up Elijah's cloak, and walked back to the Jordan. When he struck the water with the mantle, the river parted again. The other prophets saw and declared, "The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha." And so began the ministry of the prophet of miracles. Chapter 3. Healing the waters. Elisha's first miracle as prophet was simple but powerful. The city of Jericho had a problem. The water was bad. The land was unfruitful. Elisha asked for a bowl of salt. He went to the spring and threw in the salt, saying, "This is what the Lord says, I have healed this water. Never again will it cause death or make the land unproductive." From that day forward, the waters were healed. It was not the salt that had power. It was the word of the Lord. Chapter 4. Oil in the empty jars. One day, a widow came to Elisha, crying, "My husband is dead, and now the creditor is coming to take my 2 sons as slaves." Elisha asked, "What do you have in your house?" "Nothing," she said, "except a little oil." Elisha said, "Go and ask all your neighbors for empty jars, as many as you can. Then go inside and pour oil into all the jars." She obeyed, and as she poured, the oil kept flowing. Jar after jar filled, until there were no more jars left. Then the oil stopped. Elisha said, "Sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left." From nothing, God had provided everything. Chapter 5. The Shunammite's son. In a town called Shunem, a wealthy woman and her husband built a room for Elisha to stay whenever he passed by. Elisha asked his servant Gehazi what could be done for her. Gehazi replied, "She has no son, and her husband is old." So Elisha promised, "This time next year, you will hold a son." She did. But one day, years later, the boy cried out in pain, my head," and died in his mother's arms. She laid him on the prophet's bed and rode to find Elisha. "Did I ask you for a son?" she cried. "Did I not say, 'Do not raise my hopes'?" Elisha returned with her. He entered the room, shut the door, and prayed. Then he lay on the child, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands. The boy's body grew warm. He sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. God had given life where death had taken hold. Chapter 6. Naaman the leper. Naaman was a mighty commander of the Syrian army, brave, victorious, honored. But he had leprosy. He came to Israel seeking healing. Elisha didn't even come to the door. Instead, he sent word, "Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan and you will be cleansed." Naaman was furious. I thought he would wave his hand over the spot and call on the name of his God. But his servants said, "If the prophet had asked you to do something hard, would you not have done it? Why not do the simple thing?" So Naaman went. He dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, and on the 7th time, his skin was restored, like that of a young boy. Naaman returned and said, "Now I know there is no God in all the world except in Israel." Chapter 7. The Floating Axe Head. One day, while building a new dwelling near the Jordan, a young prophet accidentally dropped a borrowed axe head into the river. He cried, "Oh no, my lord, it was borrowed." Elisha asked where it fell. The young man pointed. Elisha cut a stick, threw it into the water at that spot, and the iron floated. He told the young man, "Lift it out." And he did. Even the smallest losses mattered to God. Chapter 8. The Army of Angels. At another time, the king of Aram sent an army to capture Elisha, who kept revealing his war plans through prophecy. They surrounded the city where Elisha stayed. His servant panicked. "Oh no, my lord, what shall we do?" Elisha said, "Don't be afraid. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." He prayed, "Lord, open his eyes so that he may see." And suddenly the servant saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. Heaven's army had already arrived. God had surrounded the surrounded. Chapter 9. The Final Miracle. After death years later, Elisha died and was buried. But even in death, the power of God remained. One day, as some men were burying a body, they saw raiders approaching. In a hurry, they threw the dead man's body into Elisha's tomb. As soon as the body touched Elisha's bones, the man came to life and stood up. The prophet's final miracle was one of resurrection, a final sign that the power of God cannot be buried. Epilogue. The God behind the miracles. Elisha performed more miracles than any prophet in the Old Testament, from healing to resurrection, from provision to protection. But the greatest miracle wasn't the floating iron or the parted waters. It was that God never stopped seeing his people. In hunger, he fed them. In sickness, he healed them. In fear, he surrounded them. In death, he raised them. And through a man who once burned his plow to follow God, the Lord showed that he was present, powerful, and personal. Then, and now. Final message: the God of miracles still moves. The story of Elisha is not just a record of the past, it's a promise for the present. God still speaks, God still sees, God still works wonders through ordinary lives offered to him. Like Elisha, you may be called to let go of what's safe, to burn your plow, to walk in obedience, to trust in a power greater than yourself. And when you do, You may just find that the God of fire and healing, of mercy and might, is closer than you ever imagined.